What's up, everybody? Welcome to week 0 of the NFL Brekkie Show. No week 1 yet. We still have, we can count the hours until NFL kickoff proper, but Lodge, we would be remiss if we didn't take one more crack at our preseason season outlook prognostications and invite you to do the same. Please hit us up in the comments with affirmations of our takes, refuting Law's terrible opinions. Or just give us your own if we end up not talking about the Texans, because I don't think we're going to. But the season is here. Hope springs eternal for 32 NFL teams. And between now and January, the greatest soap opera in sport, in my opinion, will play out before our very eyes in ESPN in Australia every Friday, Monday, and Tuesday morning on ESPN. Laws, as it is the offseason, everybody's coming back from the proverbial summer holidays, going back to school, and this happens every year. There are people who, whether they took on a new wardrobe, maybe found a fitness regimen, you kind of look and, say, hey, even one of your best mates, like, who got hot? Did you get a little hot? Who got hot? That is the premise of this. Laws, for you in the NFL, we've been away for, 7 months now. Who got hot?
And there's different tiers to this, right, Phil? We talk about it sometimes. Sometimes it's the tan. Sometimes it's the culture. Sometimes it's someone went on exchange to continental Europe. And yeah, I know you got the tan. I'm hoping I got the culture. But someone goes on an overseas trip. Maybe they do exchange and they come back a little more worldly. Maybe it's some new frames. Maybe, as you mentioned, it's the wardrobe. Maybe they've been lifting. Maybe who knows what it is. Maybe it's just an innate sense of confidence and happiness with self that is showing up on their face and making them hotter, as it were. But who got attractive for me right off the top? I have been a Justin Fields believer since the college days. I thought he was drafted in terms of his rankings in that quarterback class, that rookie class. I think he should have been an earlier pick. I don't think he should have lasted as long as he did. But hey, that's the Bears' game. Rocky early start, some signs of progress, especially with the wheels in year 2. I think who got hot for me off the top is that Bears offense. I think they're poised to be a more balanced and on schedule attack. There's so much of the big plays that the Chicago Bears delivered for us last season was Justin Fields looking, not having much, taking off once the offense embraced his legs a little more. And we saw 50-yard scampers, 60-yard scampers, and so on. But this season, with the addition of DJ Moore, kind of pushing everybody in that wide receiver rung down just into a more appropriate spot. Darnell Mooney can be a nice number 2. Chase Claypool, whilst I don't think he's the sum of his parts when it comes to how good a receiver he is versus, the physical tools and traits that he brought into the NFL. I think in that outside number 3 kind of role is a little more apt. And then you look at someone like Tyler Scott, who makes their way into the offense there, who can be a contributor later with that speed to match. I think, and it starts with DJ Moore off the top, that receiving core is in such a better place for Justin Fields to take advantage of that offense, to take a huge step forward. They invest in the offensive line. We saw someone like Tevin Jenkins find a more natural home inside as opposed to being drafted as a tackle. They continue to make Darnell Wright looking like an absolute. Is it hard to say steal if you picked in the top 10? But he looks like an immense addition there on the right side of the offensive line. Someone I loved in the draft, and someone who the story in the offseason was that he read the wrong fitness regime in the offseason. We talk about someone getting hot. He read the testing he'd have to do as a wide receiver, not as an offensive line, trained the absolute house down. This was a guy who was already 330 pounds plus coming out of the draft, and whose MO, whilst I did think he had good feet and I thought his body worked in unison, his MO was the power game and mauling and just really overwhelming you. Then he comes in and he's ready to do the wide receiver testing. Someone who got hot, 330 pounds of absolute mauling offensive line power, ready to do the wide receiver sprint drills. So I love the additions there. We talked in one of our previous shows. I'm a big fan of Khalil Herbert as a breakout potential pro bowler in this season. I also love Roschon Johnson behind them out of Texas. So I like the balance at all those key positions surrounding Justin Fields from a cohesive, consistent, on schedule, but still massively explosive offense. Who got hot? Chicago Bears offense did.
Yeah, Laz, and if you look in our rundown, I know nobody can see this, it's bad TV, but I put a parenthetical that you and I are already in sync, because they were my number 2 pick for who got hot. I'll give you my number 1 second, but who for me, it wasn't the Bears offense. I think I had something about like the weapons for Justin Fields. I know some people are down on the running back room, but I think Roschon Johnson, we overlooked him dramatically at university because he was behind Bijan Robinson. Now he gets an opportunity for a growing offense and what I think is the clear number 2 team in a very bad division. For me, the clear number 1 team, I think, in that division is my who got hot. And it's kind of, it's the person who was just, for whatever reason, the wardrobe was in tatters, maybe needed a shower before they showed up. And then, it's kind of just clean up the act. It just got hotter. The Detroit Lions defense was shambles in the first half of last season. And then as their young core got more repetition, some of them got healthy. James Houston, Josh Paschal, Malcolm Rodriguez, all behind Aiden Hutchinson, their starlet, the local boy, the pick. The 22 draftees, they played serviceable defense, and it led to a run for the Lions. Now they take a decent defensive focus in the draft. They got Jack Campbell earlier than most would have liked, but still a quality player out of Iowa. Brian Branch. They go out in free agency, get Cam Sutton, CJ Gardner-Johnson from Philly. They got Emmanuel Mosey from San Francisco. Listen, it's not a great defense. I don't think it's a top 10 defense, but if you put that young offense, that really exciting receiving or running back room, and Amon-Ra St. Brown, the budding star he is, Jared Goff, mature on offense, you put that with now a defense that's average, I see a team that wins 10 or 11 games. I know you might disagree, but for me, the Lions defense may not have gotten hot, Laws. They got hotter.
And that's what we're talking about. There's grades to this. There's scales to this. It's not everybody jumping from a 7 to a 10. Sometimes it's jumping from a 4 to a 7.
It's the good for you, right? Hey, man, have you been hitting the treadmill? Good
but
for
so
you.
Much when you
not quite there, but making progress.
When you're talking about teams getting better overall and becoming more complete units, sometimes it's not just about making everything a strength. That's very, very hard to do. Possibly impossible. There's some verbiage for you off the top, but what it can be is you do have strengths in the team. We know that Lions lent on an offense that was incredibly productive last season, putting Jared Goff in good position. But just bringing that defense from below average to average, or below average to average plus, turning a D into a B minus is still progress. And it's still something that if you took that report card home to your parents and said, look, this is an area struggling, but we made progress and we're going to continue investing and turning this into a strength. That's something that I think most parents would look and say, you know what, weren't happy with the original grade, but like to see that you're putting in effort and taking it forward. All right, while we've got the school metaphors going. All right, you mentioned, you're touching on an NFC defense there, and I'm going to stick with that theme for right now. A team that is, if the Detroit Lions were the industry trendy pick, the NFL literati, some people would, it's a bit of a dated reference now, but the hipster pick last season. If that was the Detroit Lions, I think this year we're looking at a team like the Atlanta Falcons that is getting a lot of that love. So much of that is on the offensive side of things, where they've got those 3 massive pillars of offensive talent at the skill positions that have invested those early top 10 picks in. And then we see, faith in Desmond Ridder. We talk about the offensive line. We'll touch on some of that talent later on, but I wanted to focus who got hot or who got hotter. I'm just having a look at that Falcons secondary. Now, this is a team you've been able to, if you saw the Atlanta Falcons as your opposition for your quarterback or your wide receiver or your tight end on your fantasy team, you figured you were in for some good days as long as you didn't find too much time against AJ Terrell, standout corner there. But they've got a couple of pillars in that secondary now that make me really excited that, the Dirty Birds down there in Atlanta, that they can turn that into a bit of a no-fly zone. I mentioned Terrell off the top, but you look at the safety spot there. I like Richie Grant coming out of college. He showed growth in year 2. Now he gets to work alongside one of the best field generals at the safety spot in the league with Jesse Bates coming in. That's a lovely pairing there for the spine of your defense. So you got Bates and you got Richie Grant there in the middle. Now, I'm not overly, I'm not falling in love with the idea that Jeff Okudah is going to finally, realize all his potential that failed to materialize into actual production in Detroit. But you get Okudah across from there. He's not going to be asked to be the number 1 corner, so that's a plus. He's got support network inside at the safety spot. And then you add someone like Clark Phillips to play in that nickelback role. Clark Phillips, an incredibly smart, productive player at the college level. This is someone that not the most, he's not going to jump off from a size standpoint. He's not got the length. He's not got, outrageous, measurables, the hand size, the shoulder length, the wingspan. It's not what jumps off, but his tape showed an incredibly instinctive, productive, fast player, plays very, very quick on tape, an absolute emotional leader, someone who taps into the crowd and his fellow teammates undoubtedly was a leader in college. He brings that mentality, that versatility to fill in nicely at the nickel spot as well. So I think you've got 4 pieces there, 4 young, still relatively young pieces. Jesse Bates has been in the league for a little while now, but you've got 4 absolute cornerstones of a secondary there. And that's the environment that you surround someone like Jeff Okudah, where it's a nice gamble to see if we can get something that Detroit failed to do. Tap into that talent, make him a more consistent player. There are occasional flashes with Okudah, but yeah, that's the one for me. There's a lot of talk about, obviously, Bijan Robinson, a lot of talk around the skill position talent on offense for the Atlanta Falcons, but I'm just having a look at that secondary, and I think they could swiftly become one of the more talked about and promising young units in the NFL.
Yeah, for me, it all starts with that pass rush. They were second from bottom in the NFL last season in sacks. And if you can pressure the quarterback, there's a trickle down throughout your defense. Look no further than Philadelphia last year. Laz, I'll be quick on mine. The last who got hot, just somebody with a new friend group who, just upgrading the company around him, and just, for whatever reason, maybe was, not taking the book seriously. Now he's getting better grades, or, we talked about fitness regimen or whatever, just hanging out, maybe some cooler kids. For me, that's Derek Carr, already a good looking guy. Derek Carr got hot with the new friend group. He goes from the Raiders, who it's been an organizational mess for 10 or 15 years. Bad news with Chandler Jones apparently posting that he wants out suddenly on the eve of the season. That's not great. To New Orleans, a team that, if you look at the back half of that defense, take away their D-line, which is a little bit of a weakness. They don't really have too much special going on in terms of edge rush, but their off-ball linebackers, corner and safety pairing, it's a big statement. Maybe the best in the NFC. Start looking down the roster. I mean, it's top 2 or 3 at worst in the NFC, that off-ball linebacker corner safety combo. Offensive line improves coming from Oakland here. They have the easiest strength of schedule in the NFL. And for me, they have the easiest route to a division title of any team that you could foresee getting double-digit wins. A nice variety for Derek Carr of receiving options if Michael Thomas is healthy. We love Chris Olave. Alvin Kamara's coming back in week 6, week 7. Derek Carr is a guy who has never won a playoff game. I think that ends this season. Just talk about the collective friend group that the market for them right now is 9.5 wins, and the overpay is $2. I like that wager. I also like $2.40 for him to go over 4,000 yards on the season. It's a team I like. It's a player I like. It's a fit I like. Derek Carr in the Big Easy will have an easier time leading his team to the playoffs. And Laz, that brings us to, a staple of the show for some time. We love to, if you look at markets, whether or not you're keen for a punt, whether or not that's your vein, it does give context of what the general popular opinion is. And we are proud to partner with Tab on this next segment that will be featured throughout the season, backed by popular demand. The popular demand, Laz and I are best prop picks throughout the season, brought to you by Tab. And again, if you do decide to have a wager, please do so responsibly. Laz, at season's outset, you and I wanted to go short, medium, long. You need to have 3 layers to your passing attack, or have 3 layers to this. And obviously the longer shots have better markets and better payouts, less likeliness to hit, but that's why, they have big numbers attached. I'll let you lead off. Short, medium, long. Where's your check down route? What's a even money market thereabouts in which you have a high measure of confidence?
Ironically, the team that I'll be talking about, the quarterback, was certainly known for some productive checkdowns. Certainly back in his Rams days, finding Todd Gurley out there in the flat to go make some plays. But I'm going to look at the Detroit Lions, and I mentioned off the top that they were certainly 2022 offseason, preseason coming into that year. They were the industry trendy pick, and there's still a lot of support around them. But in what we expect to be a very even NFC North, I actually have them missing the playoffs. Now, you're finding this on Tab at about $2.50 is the mark. Those odds are correct as of today. It's subject to change. But I look at the Lions, and I think you're going to need to get to double-digit wins. At least it may need to be 11 wins to take out the division. I think you're going to need to get to 10 wins in total to make the playoffs coming out of the NFC. I know the NFC's weak in general, but you look at some of the teams and how their schedules stack up, particularly with some of the softer division versus division matchups. So I'm looking at the Lions to miss out here. I ran through their schedule, and they do have a very, very even, division across the board. Who knows what you can get from the Bears, Jordan Love and the Packers. There's some promising signs there. The Minnesota Vikings, yes, they went 11-0 or 3,000-0 against in one-score games last year. You expect some regression, but I think there's a lot of hype there. I ran through every single one of their numbers, and I think asking Jared Goff to reproduce to reproduce the numbers that we saw last season at such an efficient, clean rate, at such a low turnover rate down the stretch there as well. And whilst I do think there's promising signs for that defense, you're asking for a pretty monumental leap. To some people saying, could this be a top 10 unit in the NFL? So ultimately, I'm going against the trend there. I'm looking at a team like the Lions. I like what we've seen from some of their fellow contenders in the division, some of their rivals there. I want them to miss the playoffs. That's about $2.50. And I think whilst that I don't think they're bound for a huge step back. I think the expectation that they could jump into the playoffs and make a run, I think we're just a bit short of that. We made the step last season to go from really low down to more competent. We had some upsets there. Obviously, the moral victory of all moral victories against the Packers. I don't think we're going to see them make the huge jump up to that 11-12 win team. I think they're going to fall just short. So that's my first one, my short yardage game, my little dump off. Wow,
Laz, I see. It took one topic for us to be in sync, and then the second segment, first topic, we are out of sync. I have a multi where very confident in the Chiefs to win their division and the Jags to win their division, and the third leg of my multi is the Lions to win their division, and all of that together pays somewhere in the $6 or $7 mark. I got to go check my app, but for me, all of that hinges on the Lions to do so, and I don't necessarily think they need to get to 11 wins. I'm pretty down on the rest of the NFC North. I think 10 wins will suffice, so that's where I see Detroit landing is 10-7, getting into the playoff, having a playoff home game and losing it. But I like them in the playoffs. But I will stay in the NFC North for my short pick, my check down, my confident, my Captain Kirk pass, if you will. Kirk Cousins to go 30 or more passing touchdowns, pays $1.85. So, just shy of even money, but that's why it's a check down. 30 or more touchdowns. He was at 29 last year, and he went 30 of 3 of the 4 years prior. I just envisioned this team in the red zone. And where am I going? Am I going to Justin Jefferson? Am I going to KJ Osborne? Am I going to Jordan Addison, the rookie out of USC? Am I going to TJ Hawkinson, who just got a mega deal? The backfield, absent Dalvin Cook, you lose a lot of the ability to hand it off. Alex Madison will get his touches for sure. But this is a team with a very bad defense. It's going to be playing from behind a lot more throwing than they did last year. I agree. Minnesota will regress to the mean in terms of one-score wins. I think this is an 8-win team, maybe a 9-win team, finishing just behind the Lions, and probably I like the Bears in that same amount. But I think Captain Kirk ends up in that 32 to 35 touchdown range. So I like him a lot at the number of $1.85.
Hard to imagine their defense taking a huge step forward. I know you get a change of schematics over there, but the talent level on that defense, it's hard to imagine they'll be keeping a lot of teams to, sub 20 points. So yeah, Kirk's going to have to throw that thing around. It's not dissimilar from situations we've seen in the past with Kirk Cousins, where that defense has started to age out in Minnesota, and we know that he gets streaky, he gets hot. And if you put him in position, and that offensive line is another team that is invested in the offensive line, then it can be a talented top 10 unit. Put him in place to stand there and deliver. And you already went through all the weapons there. Okay, let's get to my medium one. This is your intermediate route. This is your classic. It's like your 15-yard dig over the middle. Hit that break, cut inside, present me an option, maybe even that second window, a little zone beater there, maybe a little cover 3 beater on that in-breaking route there. So this is where I'm going here. And look, this is someone I expect to put defensive secondaries in a lot of binds, and that is DJ Moore. I'm going DJ Moore at over 1,000 yards, or 1,000 or over yards at $3.50, 1,000 or over receiving yards, I should say. Your star receiver, I've already mentioned his name once in this show. He will be prime target number 1. We saw that already in preseason. We've seen it in some of the training camp videos. He looks absolutely sensational. They're working with Justin Fields. It's not a huge number, 1,000 yards, especially in a 17-game season. What used to grab people's eyes with 1,000-yard seasons, the barometer has really moved on now. When we're talking about the top receivers in the league, we're up at that 12, 13, 14, 1,500-yard plus mark there. So $3.50 is the mark there that you're getting for DJ Moore. Clearly your number 1 target. And again, we talk about the environment there. Whilst the offense is very much set up to take a step forward, I don't think anybody's looking at the depth chart on the Chicago Bears defense and going, you know what, we're in trouble here. Or, they could really put the clamps on us. When I was talking about the Lions, talking about schedule, and obviously in AFC West matchups, they open the season against Kansas City Chiefs. It's Friday Australian time. You catch that on ESPN a little after 10 a.m. in the morning. But those AFC West matchups, few of those you expect to be low-scoring affairs. So I look at Justin Fields. Yes, he's prone to break it off himself. Yes, in the red zone, he could tuck the ball and run, but we're not talking touchdowns here. We're talking yardage. That's something that DJ Moore has always excelled at. I think he takes a huge step. I don't come away from this season stunned at all if DJ Moore is being talked about in that kind of top 10, maybe between 6 and 10, but in that top 10 receiver category. So over 1,000 yards, getting that at $3.50 is my intermediate route there, that middle of the field beater.
Laz, I tell you in principle, don't cite training camp video as a reason for liking this little cell phone shot of practice. Like, yeah, Dak Prescott threw a couple interceptions in a practice game. It's not the same consequence. It's training camp. I'll give you preseason. That little tunnel screen that he took 62 yards at the crib. That's going to be a problem for teams to handle. But training camp video for me. That you lost me there for a second. You brought me back. You lost me. You brought me back. But I will stay in the same kind of receiving over market vein with these. You can get kind of ahead of yourself with these sometimes. And, overs and unders, I'm a little bit of a curmudgeon when we do these leading into Monday Night Football every Tuesday morning right here on the NFL Brekkie Show throughout the season. I take a lot of unders. And I do fairly well on those. People tend to just be optimists and lean over. This market, though, I'm going to be an optimist. My glass is half full. Tyreek Hill, over 1,500 receiving yards at $3 even. Pause. If you're giving me even money over or under on this, I'm taking the under. If you're giving me $3 on it, which our friends at Tab are, I'm going over. This dude had 1,700 receiving yards last year, and that tailed way down at the end. He only went over 100 one time in the last 5 games when Tua Tagovailoa was out for the season. Now Tua, we hope, is healthy. And if you are backing Tua to play 12, 14, 15 games in the Dolphins, it sounds like they're very confident he will. I love this at $3, especially when number 3 wide receiver is Braxton Berrios. Yeah, Jalen Waddle's going to get his. This team doesn't have a tight end. Their wide receiving depth really falls off after number 2. So for me, Tyreek Hill over 1,500 receiving yards at $3 is for me, the cheetah, it's not, I guess by definition, right? It's a 15-yard out route. I can't say I'm giving him a screen and having him take 15 yards. It's a low percentage pass that hits easily. The analogy falls apart, Lodge, but you know what I mean. Little out route to the sideline. Lefty Tua hits him on the numbers, and he picks up 15 yards. That pays $3.
One of the plays that the Miami Dolphins made so effective last year was that little play action. You threaten deep over the top with your immense speed with Hill and Waddle, and they just come back in that soft middle part of the field. So it works perfectly. The seamless transitions continue because you are talking about someone who can take it deep there. Now we're going to move on to the deep shots, long shots, downfield, chuck it up there. We need a big splash play. Tyreek Hill certainly made plenty of those. The Dolphins have made plenty of those. I'm going to move from yardage on the offensive side to scoring on the offense. I've gone to the overall most points scored, the most productive point scoring offense. That market there, so many options you could go off the top, so many big names, big quarterbacks, offensive changes, but consider the Dolphins for a minute. Consider a tough division. Yes, there's tough defenses, but there's certainly offensive production we expect to go toe-to-toe with them when they play a team like the Jets, when they play a team like the Buffalo Bills. And consider for themselves they had some defensive issues. While I expect the likes of Jalen Phillips to absolutely explode alongside someone like Christian Wilkins up front, we know on the secondary there, you make a huge addition at the cornerback spot with Jalen Ramsey, and yet he's going to miss a huge chunk of the season. We might not get him back until around Christmas. So I think they're in a position where I think the defense will improve, but I don't expect them to be one of the top units in the NFL. That puts them in position to be in high-scoring games. This offense is absolutely loaded at the receiver position. We know this. At running back, they have explosion across the board. Okay, Jeff Wilson is going to miss some time. He's more of your power element. He's going to miss some time starting the season on IR. But we have Raheem Mostert, and we know when healthy is one of the fastest ball carriers at the running back spot in the NFL. And Devon, A-Chain, lightning in a bottle, ready to take over your screens, whether it's Thursday night football, Sunday football, Monday football, which you can obviously catch on Monday in Australian time, Tuesday Australian time, and obviously Friday, nice lunchtime when the Dolphins appear there. I expect them to be in a whole bunch of thrillers. You look across their schedule, there's matchups against teams. You got what they got in the division, and then you see teams, they play the Chargers, they play the Cowboys. We know there's going to be some fireworks in prime time. At 21-1 is the number you're getting at TAB for the Miami Dolphins with all that talent to emerge as the highest scoring offense this season. I love the value there. I think there's trendy looks at teams like the Chargers with Justin Herbert and Kellen Moore in town. I'm staying on the other coast there. I'm going down to Miami. You talked about Tyreek Hill there. I'm just piggybacking off that. 21-1 for a team with that much. I know health is a question there with Tua. Love to see people are making jokes about it, but he did the jiu-jitsu training as some of his efforts in the off season to be more preventative with head knocks. You actually saw that in play. It was, people on social media was going to laugh and, take easy pot shots, but I actually thought it was really promising to see it in action, getting a push in the pocket after delivering a pass, being off balance and showing an ability how to fall in a more productive way, carry your body weight through with a roll. I know a big MMA fan that would have caught your eye as well. So he's hoping for a healthy season for Tua, healthy season for the rest of that offensive skill talent. And I think this could be, obviously, I think they might be they're already the fastest offense in the NFL, but I think they might be the most productive on the scoreboard as well.
And Laz, these long shots by definition are long shots. The parameters we put on it was payout of $10 or more. You exceeded that comfortably and reflexively. When I heard you say the Dolphins' highest scoring offense, I thought, man, they're playing the Bills, who have top 3 defense in the NFL. The Jets defense, that secondary is terrific. The Patriots, we know where they're going to be well coached, and they bring in Christian Gonzalez. But that said, they played the Bills in Buffalo early when it's still warm here, late in the northern summer, and then they play them late in Miami. So the conditions won't be a factor in those games. There's a cogent argument to be made there for the Dolphins. Funny enough, when we did these, I actually went the other way for my long shot. And again, it shows similar strategy between you and I with these prop markets. I went with the lowest scoring team in the NFL this season, getting them at exactly $10. The Washington soon-to-be former Commanders. You look across the NFL, and if you said, Laz, if we had a topic on here, we usually don't do things that are this vanilla, but who has the worst offense in the league? Maybe Tampa, maybe Indianapolis, maybe Washington, maybe Green Bay. All due respect to Bryce Young.
Luke Musgrave in town.
But as I'm saying, but like in that group, like the worst 6, if you can throw Carolina and Atlanta in there, and I mentioned those 6 in particular. Those are the 6 lowest ranked offenses on Mike Clay's, just in terms of personnel, top to bottom, offensive line, skill positions, quarterback room, everything. Those are his 6 worst teams. Washington's in there. They're the only one that doesn't have a top 10 easiest strength of schedule. In fact, their strength of schedule metric is, again, inexact at season's onset, but it's 6th hardest. And I don't think there's any dispute. They're in the toughest division of any of those teams. AFC South, NFC North. Those are thin divisions. They have the hardest division in a group of the weakest offenses. Sam Howell, Jacoby Brissett, the old adage, you have 2 quarterbacks, you have none. I think it's going to be a tough season in Washington. I see a lot of these games where they're going to be in that high single-digit, low double-digit mark, just kind of that yucky eyesore 20-11 loss to the Cowboys. That all right, we played them close, 17-12 loss to the Eagles. Like that kind of moral victory. I still think they're a year away. And for me, that's why I think Washington, lowest scoring team, $10 presents a lot of value because you start considering those other poor offenses. There are games out there for those teams where they can drop 40 on somebody. With Washington, even with the receiving core, which you and I both love, I just don't see somebody who can get them the ball with enough frequency. Ron Rivera is saying all the right things in support of Sam Howell, but I think they're going to have a really hard time staying out of that bottom 3 spots in terms of scoring offense, which you give me $10 for that. I'm going to take it. So, Laz, I think you and I will post these on social media. And again, if you are having a punt, we do urge you, please do so responsibly. This is Popular Demand brought to you by Tab. And you got to ask yourself, what are you really gambling with? For free and confidential support, you can call 1-800-858-858 or visit gamblinghelponline.org.au. Laz, that is our Popular Demand edition 0.0 for the season. But we're not done with prognostication. Oh, no. We are looking ahead. It is the season, right? We have nothing to talk about. We're not going to do preseason reviews at this point. It's week 0, hours from kickoff for the NFL season. So you and I have taken a little jaunt, a little journey to mid-February, each our own. You had an SUV that got sucked into the earth and land of the lost. And I, Phil of the Future. I didn't really watch that show, but I know the title. So I just leaned into it. Phil of the Future. So, Laz, let's quickly go through and talk about who we have winning the Super Bowl, winning league MVP, and our rookies of the year. I will let you lead off with your Super Bowl champion.
My Super Bowl champions for the 2023 season, early 2024, February, where they will be crowned, will be none other than the Baltimore Ravens. I have seen and looked across the board and taken in so much of the hype around the new offense there, which is obviously a huge storyline with Lamar Jackson back in the fold, new contract, new receiving core, Todd Monken at the helm there as the new offensive coordinator. We're going from the Greg Roman running attack, running heavy attack, running purist attack, using just about everybody. We obviously know what Lamar can do on the ground. We know the varied running backs that they've thrown at it. We've known the fullback to get involved in that offense as well. We might see a little less Patrick Ricard this year, but you add Odell Beckham Jr., you add Zay Flowers, and then you hope that you get some health out of a very talented receiver in Rashad Bateman. We know Mark Andrews is there. J.K. Dobbins back in the fold. So from an offensive standpoint and an offensive line, again, we're talking about a unit, surprises absolutely no one if they come in with a top 5 offensive line at the end of this season. The only spot that they had a battle going on at the left guard spot there, and Simpson wins that one out. But you love it when you do have a couple of options and someone plays well enough in preseason to change your mind and earn that spot. They have some depth there. They have some snaps. And no one has a great deal of offensive line depth in the NFL these days, but they have plenty of experience and snaps in some of the bench rotation should something go wrong. Ideally, we see some health there. On the defensive side, obviously talk about the pass rush. That's where they've been waiting for the likes of Odafe Oweh to take a step forward. They drafted David Ojabo as well, looking for him after a nasty injury to end his college career, for him and that transition into the NFL, for him to find some health and for it to come on and provide some juice off the edge there. They also, in classic Ravens fashion, we knew they were going to add a veteran pass rusher, veteran edge player at some point, and in comes Jadeveon Clowney to beef that up there. Talent at the linebacker spot. We saw what Roquan Smith did arriving there, his own personal grade, and how he lifted up that defense. You have, Marlon Humphrey's health, that's a concern, and you want to see him come back at a good part of this season and healthy, playing good football. Certainly a breakout candidate there at Kyle Hamilton on the inside of the safety spot. The other corner, there is questions inside the other cornerback spot, which is not usually where we look at the Ravens and feel a little iffy about. We do have a lot of faith in that team, that culture, that front office, and the defensive standard they've set through so much the last couple of decades, that they'll find the right answer there. So I look across what they've got to go through. And look, the AFC is an absolute gauntlet as a conference. We know spoke about it yesterday. It is a quarterback Thunderdome. But when I do look, Kansas City Chiefs are obviously off the top. I've made my feelings about Patrick Mahomes and his place in history well known on this show. But if you do look at some of those fellow contenders there, if you look at a team like the Bengals, and you look at a team like the Jaguars, you look at some of these other AFC contenders, I have more faith that when we get into that point of the season, something so key like the offensive line, I think I have more belief in the Ravens to provide that platform late in the season when you are playing better defenses, when you are playing better teams, to provide for a run there. Kansas City, we will see, they're dealing with their own pretty massive news with Adam Schefter reporting that while they do believe Travis Kelce's ACL is intact, the Chiefs do. There's more scanning to be done. They have to wait for swelling to go down after he hyperextended it in training. He's in doubt for the season opener against the Detroit Lions. When we move beyond those teams, I think when you do look at some of those AFC contenders, the Chargers, it looks good on paper, but we know how that has gone from a health standpoint. Looking at the Ravens, who went through awful health luck last year, you expect a return to the norm there, a little regression to the mean there. I look at the Ravens at, again, we're talking that number again, at 21-1. I love that number for them to be our Super Bowl champions this season.
Well, Laz, I mean, similar line of thought. I almost picked, we're coming up on MVP. I almost picked Lamar Jackson as my MVP because that is a narrative-based award. I had, the reason I ultimately went against it, he and another guy who are at $15 for that market, Tua Tagovailoa, there are injury concerns. There are durability concerns. Ravens, a team that's built, that historically has been built on, having that running back. The running back depth for me is you do worry about maybe some durability there. Yeah, improved pass catchers. I think the Ravens might win the division, but I'm still going with the Cincinnati Bengals to win their first Super Bowl this year because they have the elite quarterback in Joe Burrow. They have elite wide receiving core, a serviceable O-line, a strong defense outside the safety position. And in that AFC triumvirate that Baltimore might be joining, the quad, whatever that's called, quartet. Right now, the triumvirate is the Bills, Chiefs, Bengals. You compare those, the Bills and Chiefs have irrefutably worse pass catchers and a little bit thinner of an offensive line. Baltimore and Miami can make a run if they're healthy, but we've seen the Bengals get to a Super Bowl before. They are the thorn in the Chiefs' side. On the Netflix series, quarterback Patrick Mahomes even said, like, man, I want to get back and beat the Bengals, but I do think they're a tougher challenge for us than the Bills. And of those three teams, I just think, the margins were so small for the Bengals having lost to the Chiefs last year. I think you play that game last year 10 times. It's 5 apiece. I think the Bengals are ready for that step behind Joe Burrow. They're my Super Bowl champion. And Laz, I'll continue with that. With the MVP, my MVP pick, I had said for a while here, I had Lamar Jackson. He's $15. I love the value of Trevor Lawrence at $18. But I'm going to go with Headband Joe Burrow, $8 to win the MVP. It's a narrative award. If you look at like the shortest odds here, it's all quarterbacks. So don't look any further than quarterback if you're considering this one. Joe Burrow the last 2 years has been right around 4,500 yards, right around 35 touchdowns and a dozen picks. He was 4th in MVP voting last year. So he's making his way up. And sometimes this is a lifetime achievement award, right? Year 3, he's into this big money deal. If he plateaus and has another year 2, year 3, year 4, like he had the last 2 years, I think he overtakes the likes of a Patrick Mahomes, who last year won at 48 of 50 first place votes at 5,200 yards. I can't see him getting there, even if Travis Kelce is fine and back for week 2. Jalen Hurts, who finished 2nd in MVP voting, I think unless he becomes a guy who's thrown for 35 touchdowns, I don't think he'll be considered the most valuable player in the NFL. And then Josh Allen, you and I have talked, you have a great wide receiver 1 in Stephon Diggs, but receiving options get a little tougher. That division's going to be tougher. He's playing some great defenses week in, week out. I'm not saying Josh Allen's going to regress and the Bills are going to tank. I just don't think there's that separation in the division. So looking across all those narratives and all those, I see a situation in which maybe it is 13-win Bengals against 14-win Ravens, or 13-12 right atop the AFC. But if Joe Burrow goes 4,500 yards, 35 touchdowns, a dozen picks again, he's getting the MVP. And that's why I have the Bengals winning the Super Bowl, maybe not even the division, but I have them as the winners of the NFL come February. And I have Joe Burrow, league regular season MVP, leading them there.
You're running through all those names, all those quarterbacks, particularly on the AFC side of things. And surprising for our show, Phil, there was one that I didn't hear come out of your mouth. And at 17-1, that is why, true to form, true to my heart, Trevor Lawrence is my pick.
I said Trevor Lawrence. I said Trevor Lawrence is good value at $18. Pull up the tape.
I'm not sure. Audio might have got a little scratchy from Bristol there. No, Trevor Lawrence, he's just moved into 17-1. It's what we're seeing from Tab. The narrative there is the continual growth out of the awful rookie year. Took a huge step last year. The 27-0 comeback in the playoff, roaring back from a 4-touchdown deficit. Now we look at the step forward. Calvin Ridley coming into the fold. Some reshuffling on the offensive line that needs to stand in place. Again, looking at the defensive depth chart there, you have some promising talent there. You have players like, they invested up front. Obviously in Trayvon Walker. You look at someone like Tyson Campbell that's really come along. I know you spoke about him as a candidate you could expect to break out one of our previous shows as we get ready for this season kickoff. We're 48 hours away now, Phil. This is ridiculous. But that's not an overwhelming defensive team. I think there's going to be plenty of opportunity where the ball, the game, the line, the game is going to be on the line. It's going to be on the shoulders, those draped with gorgeous long locks shoulders of Trevor Lawrence to step up and steal the show. The chemistry looks good with Calvin Ridley off the top in preseason games. Ridley looks sharp. Rocking that Agent 0 number. That number 0 looks exceptionally clean there in Jaguars colors. So Lawrence for me, and I think the defense is not going to steal the show from him. I think even if Calvin Ridley, you hope and I believe that Calvin Ridley is going to launch onto the scene there. It's not exactly in a way that's going to steal thunder away from Trevor Lawrence in terms of a team narrative. And then they don't have to make the conference championship for Trevor Lawrence to win this award. Yes, you'd want them to win playoff game again. You'd want them to make a little bit of a run. But because of where the bar has been for the Jaguars, there's not a Mount Everest that of previous achievements with that franchise that he has to be measured against, or this iteration of this roster that he has to be measured against. So Lawrence, I think it's set up there for him to gain even more primacy in this league, to him establish himself in those conversations around the AFC quarterbacks, which has been dominated in the last couple of years while Lamar's been dealing with health issues with Burrow, Mahomes, and Allen. Now we have Rodgers enter the fray. We know this. And we've got Justin Herbert around there as well. But Lawrence is in perfect position with the right level of context in the previous seasons to stand out and be a fresh. We know, whilst MVP voters have shown a propensity to, choose back-to-back players in the past, and we've seen some of the greats do it. We do know that there's often during the season, there can be a desire for a fresh narrative, especially at the top of the quarterback Mount Rushmore at the time. And Lawrence is an amazing candidate to take that. Nothing we've seen from a health and form standpoint this preseason suggests anything other than another step forward. 17-1, great value for Trevor.
Laz, my concern is that come regular season's end, when you look across the rest of the AFC South and you see 4-13 Houston and 3-14 Indianapolis, that may work against Trevor Lawrence, who I agree is violently underrated league-wide. I think he might be a year or two away from this honor. If you could get him for a future for the 2024-25 most valuable player, give me that. But I think you have to if people aren't going to respect the mountain he's climbing in the regular season, that's my concern.
It's a really fair point. It's an absolutely fair point. So in those starts, because especially when you got the NFC South on your schedule as well, being in the AFC South plays the South this year, you're going to have to take advantage of some of those marquee games against some of that standout talent. And he has the chance to wrestle that right into the forefront pretty early on with the Jaguars taking on the Chiefs in week 2. That's an opportunity that if this is to build momentum, 100%. He can't miss that chance to go toe-to-toe with the reigning king, to go toe-to-toe with someone to go toe-to-toe with a quarterback that some are saying is the greatest quarterback of all time. That's the opportunity there to really frame whatever he does against some lesser competition the rest of the season.
Okay, Laws, we got to be really quick with rookies of the year. On the offensive side, for me, I'm going Bryce Young. This award, unlike MVPs, has been very balanced: quarterback, wide receiver, running back. It's kind of hard to dissect. For me, I look at Bryce Young going into a situation, not loads of talent on that side on the side for Carolina, but some possession receivers, some running backs who can catch the ball out of the backfield. Miles Sanders coming into play, a manageable strength of schedule. If he can get Carolina to even 8 wins, in a respectable 20 touchdowns, 23 touchdowns, 12 picks, something like that, I could see $5 for Bryce Young as offensive rookie of the year is a lot of fun. Defense, I had a field day looking at this. I'm staying away. For me, this is a no play because there are really strong arguments for and against basically anybody you can get shorter than, Joey Porter Jr. at $34. I almost went Will McDonald, the fourth in New York at $26. In terms of depth chart, opportunity, skill, and spotlight, I'm going with Christian Gonzalez at $11. The knock from him out of the draft, he had traits for days. He can play the slot. He can play outside. He's got ball skills. He's fluid. He's physical. A physical and press man. Some concerns about technique and concerns about tackling. Going to New England, Bill Belichick and company will rectify those. You start to look at other positions. No interior defensive lineman has won this award since Aaron Donald in 2014. No off-ball linebacker, probably since Luke Kuechly in 2012. It's just not a common thing. It's edge rushers and corners. I like this fit. I like this depth chart position. I don't think he's necessarily the best rookie, but in terms of the ability and reps and snaps that it'll take to stand out in year one, my best guess is Christian Gonzalez, but that for me is wide open.
All right, I'll be quick with mine here. One of these is an insider, one of these is an outsider. Right off the top, favorite at the offensive rookie of the year market, I'm going with Bijan Robinson here. He's only at 4-1, but regardless, I think the situation, the context, a great offensive line. Arthur Smith, who we saw for so many years be the architect of the offense that Derrick Henry led with historic rushing numbers and stats. There's going to be ample opportunity. Tyler Algier is certainly there to be running back 2 and spell, but Bijan is going to get chances to score points in what I think will be an efficient and effective offense. Score points, score touchdowns, rack up yardage, do some stuff through the air, and have those flash plays. Not a lot of deeper science than that. I just think that one stands out, especially when you think a talent like him that's coming in their rookie year and made a splash. I think of Ezekiel Elliott. I think of Saquon Barkley. And if you are perhaps still doing late fantasy drafts, just a reminder, they finished as RB2 overall in their rookie seasons. So don't be too afraid to go early on Bijan Robinson. And then from the defensive side of things, I went a little further down the track here. I was tossing up between Nolan Smith, who looks absolutely fantastic in preseason camp, rushing off the edge there for the Eagles. I pulled back on that. Whilst I like his talent, I have him higher rated than the player I ultimately do pick. There's obviously a lot of names. He'll get opportunity. There's a lot of other talent on that defensive line there, including fellow rookie Jalen Carter in Philadelphia setup. So I don't know that the numbers are going to be there. But where I did go is hometown kid for the Kansas City Chiefs. Again, at 21-1. Must be all the Deion Sanders content we're all consuming right now. Phil, Felix Anudike-Uzomah from the Kansas City Chiefs out of Kansas State. The depth chart at edge rusher is not overwhelming. It's not something that you think he will struggle to climb up. There's been good reports through training camp, some nice steady drumbeat there. And this is also a player with a high motor, high effort who does not stop. Ideally, Chris Jones is back in the fold for the Chiefs soon enough, helping create some of that interior pressure, maybe driving the quarterback out to the channel, out to the edges, where Uzomah can make a beeline for him. But this is an effort player who, if there is an opportunity to rack up extra numbers and extra effort play sacks and tackles for loss, he fits the profile to do that, which you kind of do need to see from an edge player to take out that award. So that's where I go. Bijan and then a hometown kid for the Kansas City Chiefs.
Well, the crazy thing is, next time you and I do this NFL Brekkie show, it will be leading into the Week 1 finale, Bills at Jets, closing out the opening week of regular season play, Monday Night Football Tuesday morning, right here on ESPN social airwaves, our digital show, but then leading into ESPN on television. Keep the conversation going with us on our social media. I will be back with a new edition again of the NFL Brekkie Show, recapping Week 1. Loads coming up on ESPN TV this week. I can't quite announce because there's a press release coming out. But the new NFL Blitz pairings are very exciting. I'm very excited with what the season's going to hold. You get a debut of that Friday morning leading into Chiefs-Lions, and then another one Monday morning recapping everything with 3 a.m. kickoffs in Sydney, as you know all too well, Laz. So in case you slept in and missed it, we have probably the most unique breakdowns we've ever had on SportsCenter NFL Blitz. Monday mornings coming up, and then Tuesday morning NFL Brekkie Show leading you into Bills and Jets alongside my good pal Laurie Horesh. I am Phil Murphy. Thank you so much for hanging out with us on this edition of the NFL Brekkie Show. We will see you